You see him on 24/7 Sports at Late Kick Josh on Twitter. You folks love when Josh Pate comes on the show with us. He is with us now on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline. What's up, Josh Pate? How are you?
This will shock you guys because I don't think I've ever said this before, but I am in Atlanta, Georgia, covering a Georgia football game. Wild concept, but I'm told it's going to go down tomorrow. How are you?
Wow. What's behind the curtain?
Behind the curtain is the skyline of Atlanta. I'd love to open it, but it drowns the lighting
That's
out.
right, yeah.
Dunaway always schools me about my production quality,
That's
so
right.
blinds closed.
That's right.
He'll tell people how they should have done it. Trust me, yes.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, please feed our ego as the Alabama media. You guys are having a college football playoff without us. That's a rarity since 2014. Is there like a blank table with our name on it somewhere?
I can arrange it. Yeah. Plenty of tables around here not being used, but that pales in comparison to talking to some of the folks out at the Fiesta Bowl. I mean, I don't believe in meaningless playoff games or anything like that, but there's about 85 to 90% of the oxygen in the room being sucked into this game. And so they've told me out there, hey, you want to take 2 or 3 media gifts? You want to double up at the buffet? Go for it. We're fine. We're more than stocked and ready for you. So it actually sounds like, also, you get to stay in Scottsdale. So it sounds like that's the place to be right now.
Hey, I'm sorry, Lance.
No,
You tweeted this earlier. The vibe around Ohio State's fan base is the weirdest I've ever seen for a team in the college football playoff. You're limited by characters there. You are not limited by words or time here. Please explain that.
They're not happy. This is not a happy people right now. And the funny thing is, normally you associate Ohio State fans, just like Bama fans, you associate them with ultra passionate, sometimes to the point of being on tilt and unable to carry on a rational conversation with you. And I say that complimentary, but with Ohio State right now, I've had multiple occurrences being here. I've been here since 3 a.m. So it's been this morning, basically, where you talk to the fans and you say, hey, I think you guys got a good shot. And the fans are the one who tell you, don't get too excited. Did you see the Michigan game? And listen, even if we do win it, man, there's always going to be that blight on this record of ours. So if we win the championship, that's great. If we don't, which we won't, don't worry. Ryan Day's still got a ton of questions to answer after the season. And it's like you feel like just putting your index finger over their lips and saying, let's let it play out first. I have felt kind of like a counselor with a bunch of these fans on my couch in my office. That's what the entire fan base feels like right now. It's the weirdest thing in the world that you're trying to talk them into thinking that they have a shot instead of the other way around.
Ironically, Dunaway brought up 2014. I'll never forget, we're in New Orleans covering that game, Josh.
Yep.
And I was on the elevator with Ohio State fans, and they didn't think they had a shot against Alabama. So, maybe this is a good thing for Ohio State.
Well, you need think back no further than last year. I'm not saying all Bama fans had a defeatist mentality coming into the SEC championship game, but they were certainly nearly a touchdown dog for a reason. And so revisionist history will lead to nobody admitting this, but you guys and I both know there was a portion of the Alabama fan base that didn't like their odds at all against Georgia in the SEC championship game last year. And what did it take? It didn't take 10 or 15 things happening. It took Jamison Williams and John Mechie. Like that. Remember, that's also the game where Bama goes in and they're just white flagging the run game. They don't even think they'll be able to run the ball. Brian Robinson may or may not be able to go. We got nobody else. So it's just going to have to be Bryce Young in this passing game. Well, guess what won the day? Bryce Young in the passing game, and it ended up being a double-digit win. I'm not saying that's going to be duplicated tomorrow night. I'm just saying I think it's going to be worth watching the first or second quarter just to make sure it's not a Georgia blowout.
By the way, Alabama fans can attest to Ohio State fans losing the rivalry game and winning a national championship. Very few people talk about the rivalry game in 2017 that Alabama lost. So tell them that Michigan game goes away quickly if you win the national championship. Josh Pate's with us as we have a conversation about these playoffs. For Ohio State to win the game, you just painted a couple of things. What is Stetson Bennett's getting a lot of love now, which is uncharacteristic for his career. Is he the kind of guy that could lose the game for Georgia? Does Stetson have that in his DNA that he could be the one thing that brings down the Georgia Bulldogs?
Yeah, that can happen. I think he's made a career out of playing his best when it matters the most. This time last year, perfect case study of that. But I don't think just because he has stepped up in big moments that it necessarily changes your game plan. You're playing percentages here. You're trying to do for your team what gives you the best chance to win. And I would argue, all due respect to Stetson Bennett, he's won them a couple of games. That doesn't change my approach if I'm Jim Knowles, because I'm certainly not going to let Georgia rip it off for 6 yards per carry and just slow bleed me to death. Now, counterpoint, I'm also not going to play them like I played Michigan and allow 5 plays to account for like 35 points. There's probably a happy middle ground there. But yeah, I still think you've got to be at ease, taking your chances, putting the ball in his hands. And here's what else you have to know, or you hope you know. If you're Ohio State, you don't have to hold Georgia to 24 points. You hope that you'll be able to put more than that on the board. Now, they didn't. Ohio State didn't against Michigan, but that's what you hope. Look, if Ohio State's not scoring more than that, it's probably a lost cause to begin with, unless it's just a really weird, like 17-13 kind of game. But yeah, that's the first point. And the second point is, I've always been interested in this because it never happens. I've always wanted to see that position where Stetson Bennett and Georgia for like 3 quarters just have to trade points back and forth. People thought the Tennessee game may be that, and it wasn't at all. That wasn't the style of game that was at all. Ohio State game may not be that way either, but this team they're going to play tomorrow night, they at least have the horses to make that happen. Another thing to watch, I don't know about the rest of that Ohio State team, but Marvin Harrison Jr. is the kind of guy that you would love to duplicate 84 more times, not just because of his talent, but from the neck up. He's wired just like the coaching staff is, and he gets another shot. And if you want to see what is as close to a Jamison Williams caliber player against Georgia this year, as we saw last year with J-Mo, that would be Marvin Harrison Jr., and he gets another shot. I don't think he'll waste it. I can't account for the rest of the team, but I don't think he'll waste it.
At Late Kick Josh Pate, 24/7 Sports with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline. I was trying to determine the best quarterback Ohio State has faced this season on yesterday's show. I believe it to be Taulia Tagovailoa. I mean, if you just look at season numbers, that's who it is. And Stetson Bennett is well beyond that. For whatever it's worth, they have not faced a quarterback that is anywhere, in my mind, close to Stetson Bennett.
Yeah, here's the other thing they haven't faced. You can't just mention Stetson Bennett without also mentioning, when I say the cast around him, I don't just mean his receivers. I mean Stetson Bennett's legs are a part of their offense because that offensive line and those tight ends and those backs blocking and those wide receivers on the perimeter blocking allow Stetson Bennett's legs to be a part of the game. And if you were to like circle a key for Georgia, before you dive into your playbook, before you really start to kind of unfold your offensive philosophy and your approach for this game, you just got to see how they match up physically. Because if it really is a physical mismatch, it's not Picasso. It's more like paint by numbers at that point. And at that point, they get to play as conservative as they want to, and you may see Stetson Bennett run the ball as many times as he throws the ball. Now, I don't think that's the way the game will play out, but it's certainly, given the reputation of this Ohio State team in some big games, behooves you to make sure you test and found those cracks in that foundation before you really start to open it up. If they don't have to open it up, number one, it's a really boring game. But number two, think about what that does. I know you and I talked about this. You guys and I talked about this about a month ago, going into that Michigan game, what it would do for Ryan Day. They lost. Well, they lost, and they lost convincingly. We didn't know they were going to get another shot. Now they get another shot. And I think that fan base is very trepidatious, if I can dive into my thesaurus there for a
very
reason.
Nice, yes.
I think they kind of they're shaken of the hand right now. That the liquid is very, very unsettled in their hands, because I think deep down they understand if they were to lose this game by double digits, in reality, Ryan Day is the coach he is. It doesn't change anything, but perception and resume matters a whole heck of a lot in this sport. And all of a sudden, what did you do? Well, you wasted C.J. Stroud and you wasted a whole lot of talent, but also the book on you is out now. Like, the book on you is you don't measure up. Anytime you face a team that is remotely comparable to you in recruiting, or in Michigan's case, they don't even recruit on Ohio State's level, still have bullied them 2 games in a row. All of a sudden you start worrying if you're just a light version of these other programs, which is great against Indiana and Rutgers and Purdue. But then when you have to face them, you get humiliated. And it doesn't matter if you win 10 games or 11 games every year, because eventually you're going to have to run up against them. Like, I still don't think people are appreciating how severely one way or the other, the pendulum is going to shift on Ryan Day after this game, which is the exact same sentence I gave you going into the Michigan game.
Yeah, it's really amazing, Josh. I mean, we're talking about a guy in the regular season, he's 39-3. In his 4 years there, he's been to 3 college football playoffs. And I get the big game narrative right now, but still, I mean, I guess the expectation's the same in Tuscaloosa, Clemson, Georgia, but that's about it.
Here's where I think it's very healthy to go back this time last year and remind everyone, I'm talking to the entire audience, I'm talking to you three, I'm talking to myself, what were you saying about Kirby Smart right now 365 days ago?
Can he be?
Because let me remind you what had just happened. He had just gone to his 4th consecutive loss against Saban in the SEC title game. And the entire month of December was spent questioning whether he should start JT Daniels in the playoff games. He didn't. And now everyone forgets that. Stetson Bennett's the toast of the town. Kirby Smart's one of, if not the best coaches in America, 1A, 1B with Saban. And the same folks who have coronated them were the ones telling you 1 year ago, he can't win the big one. He can't get past Saban. And if he can't do that, all these recruiting titles, all this talent, all these regular season wins are meaningless. And my point there is Kirby Smart is not any different a coach 4 quarters later in Indianapolis. His resume looks different. It wasn't that he couldn't beat Saban. It's just that he hadn't done it yet. And the fact of the matter, to me at least, so I guess it's the opinion of the matter, is Ryan Day's absolutely the right guy at Ohio State. In reality, it doesn't take a night and day change. Sometimes it takes like minor fractional degrees of a course change. And then when you play that out over the span of a season or 2 seasons, you get a vast gulf in the difference of results. That's not the way that expectation and decision-making sometimes happen in this sport, but it doesn't change the fact that that's how things really happen. So there's going to be, there are people out there who are ready to tell you Ryan Day has arrived if they win Saturday, and those same people are ready to tell you he doesn't belong there if they lose. And the difference is they played 60 minutes of football. He's no different a coach one way or the other.
My Josh Pate T-shirt color wheel tells me you're going for a TV hit where you'll be debating somebody on a live television camera. White T-shirt Josh is lovable Josh. You're in black T-shirt Josh, where you're going to win. You're going to kick somebody's ass in a debate coming up here in a few minutes, aren't you?
And those are your words, not mine, Dunaway. But also you'll notice I've been fueling up. Let me turn around, because no one with a logo in this cup has sponsored this segment. So this blank cup full of blank beverage, yeah, it's getting me ready. I'm going to do it on the streets, no less. We're not even going to be indoors. We're going to be on the streets of Atlanta debating. And by the way, good for us. No one else has tried that debate platform in mid-morning hours in sports media.
All right, go follow Josh on Twitter. See his debates at Late Kick Josh 24/7 Sports. He is always great with his time with us.
You always do that to me, Skip. You always do that to me, Skip.
See you, Pate. Thank you.
See you guys.
All right, Josh Pate with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline.